The city was in ruins. Massive explosions and earthquakes had turned everything into rubble. In the midst of the chaos, a man named Mark was trapped in a large hole. When he regained consciousness, he screamed for help, but no one answered. His hand was still pinned under a large rock, but Mark tried hard not to give up. With great difficulty, he grabbed a piece of iron to reach his phone and tried to call his wife. Unfortunately, the communication network in the city was completely down. As he tried to understand his surroundings, Mark heard a terrifying roar coming from a dark tunnel nearby. Feeling desperate, Mark recorded a voice message for his wife. In the message, he said he was trapped on a street near their house, hoped his family was safe, and promised to find them. Suddenly, the sound of a helicopter was heard from above, giving him a glimmer of hope. However, that hope vanished when the helicopter crashed and almost hit him. Mark immediately tried to pry the rock pinning his hand, then crawled into a tunnel to save himself. Unfortunately, the rubble blocked all the exits. Luckily, Mark survived, although his stomach was badly injured. Quickly, he bandaged his wound using the tie he was wearing, then started navigating the dark tunnel with light from matches. As he explored further, he found a bag. Inside was a woman's wallet, a first aid kit, a photo of a small child, and a handycam with an infrared feature. Curious, Mark tried to turn the camera on. He was shocked when, through the camera's lens, he saw a woman lying not far from him. The woman, who turned out to be the owner of the bag, was still alive, but her leg was injured. Mark tried to help her. Suddenly, a small tremor shook the tunnel. The panicked woman immediately crawled deeper inside, leaving Mark behind. Mark quickly followed while continuously calling out to her. He finally found her. She looked very frightened and told him to be quiet. Mark then bandaged the wound on her leg using his belt. After things calmed down a bit, Mark asked the woman if she still had her phone. She replied that her phone had fallen out during the earlier incident. She then expressed her frustration about the earthquake that had trapped them in this horrible place. She then said something that sent a shiver down Mark's spine. This disaster wasn't just caused by an earthquake. According to her, something much more terrifying was hiding underground. Unfortunately, before she could explain further, a powerful tremor shook the area again. Mark hoped the tremor was a sign that there was still life above ground. But the woman just screamed in fear and said that everyone up there was already dead. Although confused by her reaction, Mark tried to stay calm. He urged her to keep crawling through the dark tunnel to find a way out. They continued their journey. Mark reminded her to survive for the sake of her daughter in the wallet photo. He even showed her a photo of his own child for encouragement.
Not Sarah. I've got to get for me. Get ahead. I'll be alive.
Suddenly, the woman made a shocking confession. The woman, whose name was Kate, pointed a gun at Mark and admitted that the wallet wasn't hers. She had stolen it from someone. Though shocked, Mark chose not to make a big deal of it. He preferred to focus on finding a way out. Kate also demanded that Mark hand over his matches.
Hand it over.
Kate then crawled ahead, carrying the matches. Suddenly, the terrifying roar was heard again in the distance. Instantly, Kate put out the match and the atmosphere became tense. In a panic, Mark asked for the handycam to see what was behind them. While Mark was busy checking the camera, Kate suddenly disappeared. Mark quickly followed and found Kate in a state of fear. When things started to calm down, Mark asked again about her real identity. Kate shared that the only family she had left was her older brother. But before the conversation could continue, a monster suddenly emerged from the darkness and chased them. They both crawled with all their might to save themselves. Luckily, the monster got stuck in a narrow gap in the rocks and couldn't continue the chase. Unfortunately, during the escape, Kate's pill fell out and she seemed extremely panicked. Using the infrared camera, Mark helped look for the pill. The camera screen showed the pill had fallen not far from them, about 30 feet away. However, that distance was very risky because the monster could still reach them. Mark tried to calm Kate down and promised to get her other medicine once they got out. But unexpectedly, Kate pointed her gun at him again and forced Mark to retrieve the pill.
It's trapped.
Until I get those pills.
Reluctantly, Mark obeyed her. Fortunately, Mark managed to get the pill and return safely. They continued moving slowly through the tunnel, hoping to find light at the end of the darkness that had swallowed them. Along the way, Mark asked how Kate first got trapped in this tunnel. Kate explained that while she was confused and screaming for help, monsters suddenly emerged from underground, causing the ground to split open. As a result, she fell and got trapped here. Mark then shared his own story, that he had fallen into a hole because of a massive earthquake that suddenly shook the ground and made him fall in. After sharing their stories, they continued their journey through an increasingly narrow passage. Unbeknownst to them, a monster was hunting above their heads. Soon after, a sliver of light appeared at the end of the tunnel. They both immediately felt relieved and hurried towards it, hoping it was a way out. Unfortunately, the light turned out to be from a flashlight belonging to a victim who was already dead. Kate started to panic and her breath became ragged. Mark quickly calmed her down and urged her to stay focused. They found a small bottle of alcohol and used it to clean Mark's wound to prevent infection. Just as they were about to carefully step over the dead man, the man suddenly grabbed Mark's leg. He was still alive and screaming for help. The screams, however, attracted the attention of a monster nearby. Soon, the creature came and immediately snatched the man as its prey. After the situation calmed down, they continued their journey. Kate's condition was getting worse. She looked weak and started coughing violently. Mark offered to rest for a while, but Kate insisted on continuing. She was adamant about staying in front. Puzzled, Mark asked her why. Kate answered honestly that if she crawled in front, Mark could act as a shield if a monster appeared from behind.
Just get me out. I'm not going to rest.
Hearing that, Mark felt offended and spontaneously pointed his knife at Kate. A fight almost broke out between the two of them. Suddenly, they were startled by a small sound from the darkness. Turned out to be just a rat approaching. But before they could feel relieved, a large claw suddenly emerged from the darkness and ripped the rat to shreds. They both panicked and scrambled away, crawling with all their might to save themselves. In the chaos, Mark was dragged away by a monster and disappeared into the darkness. Kate could only sit and cry silently, feeling the loss of the only person she had left. Summoning her remaining strength, she mustered the courage to keep crawling, searching for a way out. But not long after, heavy footsteps were heard from behind. When Kate dared to look back, it turned out to be Mark. He had managed to defeat the monster with just a knife, even though his body was now covered in serious wounds. They continued their journey together until they found a water pipe that was still running. For the first time, they could rest for a moment and quench their thirst. In the slightly calmer atmosphere, Kate apologized for underestimating Mark earlier. It turned out he was tough enough to defeat a monster alone. It was then that Kate noticed the burn marks on Mark's hands, which looked quite serious. In a low voice, Mark began to share that the burns were a bitter memory that always haunted him. In the past, while he was in the basement, his negligence caused the house to catch fire. Fortunately, the firefighters arrived just in time and managed to save his child. Although his child survived, they suffered severe burns. Because of his deep guilt, Mark hadn't dared to visit them for the last 6 months. Ironically, just when Mark finally mustered the courage to go see his child, this major disaster happened. Hearing that story, Kate tried to cheer Mark up. She told him that he still needed to be a responsible father to his child.
No idea what to do.
Look at me.
After a short rest, they decided to continue their journey. As Kate was about to collect some water from the pipe for their supply, she was shocked to see a dead rat floating in it. She felt disgusted, realizing that the water they had just drunk was contaminated. They kept crawling through the narrow passage until they reached the end of the tunnel, which turned out to be a dead end, blocked by a large rock. Using their remaining strength, they tried to open the path little by little. After a long struggle, they finally managed to find a large drainage channel. Unfortunately, when they tried to climb out, the opening was too high to reach. Soon after, two soldiers appeared above and prepared to help them. Sadly, before they could offer any help, the two soldiers were suddenly attacked by a very ferocious monster. The monster then tried to crawl into the drain to chase them. Quickly, Mark opened a pipe on the other side and forced Kate to go in first before the monster could reach them. Once inside, they found the drain led to a large pool. With no other choice, they were forced to dive in to find a way out. Kate, who went in first, tried to explore the bottom of the pool, while Mark waited above, alert to the monster that was still chasing them. Because Kate was underwater for too long and the monster was getting closer, Mark panicked and dove in to follow her. Fortunately, Kate managed to pull Mark in just before the creature almost caught him. They finally managed to catch their breath for a moment. However, Kate's cough was getting worse over time. Even though Kate was getting weaker, they kept struggling forward until they finally saw a sliver of sunlight at the end of the tunnel. As they approached the light, a massive tremor suddenly occurred and the ground around them shook violently. Sure enough, the monster reappeared, digging a tunnel right in front of them. Instantly, Kate and Mark froze, holding their breath. Luckily, the monster eventually left without attacking, allowing them to breathe a momentary sigh of relief. Moving carefully, Kate crawled in front again, crossing the tunnel the monster had just passed through. Mark followed from behind, staying on guard. But just as they made it through that path, Kate suddenly stopped and stood completely still. A confused Mark called out to her repeatedly, but there was no answer. When he shook her body, he realized that Kate had died. Mark could only stand in silence, consumed by guilt for failing to bring her out of this darkness. Mark tried to crawl past Kate's body to keep moving, but the narrow tunnel made it impossible to go further. In his confusion, Mark was startled by a terrifying sight. Many monsters appeared around him, digging new tunnels in every direction. Quickly, Mark took the gun from Kate's body and prepared himself in case the monsters came closer. Fortunately, the creatures did not attack. But then, a massive tremor hit. His phone started getting a signal, and messages poured in one after another. One of them was a voice message from his wife. In a trembling voice, she told him that the monsters had emerged from underground and turned into giants after being exposed to sunlight. His wife kept calling Mark's name, saying their children were now hiding in the basement waiting for him to come home. Hearing that message, Mark's will to live reignited. He looked at Kate's body, then deliberately dropped his phone and placed it near her body, hoping to lure the monsters over. Sure enough, a monster soon appeared and dragged Kate's body away, clearing a path for Mark to get through the narrow passage. But just as Mark was almost out, the monster attacked again and grabbed him. In a panic, Mark swiftly splashed the bottle of alcohol on the monster, lit a match and set it on fire. Mark finally reached the surface, but the sight that greeted him left him stunned. The city was completely destroyed and was now ruled by towering giant monsters on every corner. Mark could only stare blankly at the sky, realizing that his struggle was far from over.